Hey, everybody, this is Josh Olive with Haven Comics. We are here on a Thursday night with an awesome episode of Shop Talk, so stick around. Guys, we have got an incredible episode lined up for you tonight. So, I would like to introduce an awesome person, totally cool. Some of you know him, some of you love him, some of you probably feel the opposite. But it's been a long time since we brought him on, and that is Mr. Jeremy Bernard, who has muted himself so he can't even be angry at what I said.
That's why I needed to get it out before I just, barked it out on the internet. How are you? It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Doing okay. Staying plenty busy. What about you?
Also, always busy. Got she's 4 months old now. So
wow.
That was why I stopped doing the show. And man, how does time fly?
From what I understand, it flies because you get no sleep and your entire life is utterly disrupted.
Yeah.
And you can't tell what day it is anymore. Is that
exactly
accurate?
It's just one long stream for me.
Well, how are you? Tell us what's going on with you.
Life is good. I have been working really hard on some snake oil I'd like to let everybody know about. Every 2 years, I do my sketchbook, just of the best stuff that I've worked on over the last 2 years. So that is ready. I'm doing pre-orders for it right now. And when I do a sketchbook, that's it. It's just the pre-orders for friends and family. And then I just do the one numbered run, and that's all. So you guys can find that on my Etsy page. If you want to check it out, pre-order it. I've got the link right here. And some always end up at Haven if you miss out on it. But that's what I've been working on right now.
So let's go back to that picture for a second there.
This one?
Yeah. Who is that happy guy there? Because he looks really cheerful and sunshiny.
I got that smile. I just save it for,
Oh, you just don't ever show it to me. I got it.
I hate drawing self-portraits, but that's one I was kind of happy with. It's just I just drew it from an actual photo.
Well, now you've got your sketchbook, but you also do things. You're providing a service currently where you will venomize people.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you want him to do this to you, he will venomize you for just a few American dollars.
What'd you say for American dollars?
For just a few American dollars, he will venomize you.
USD, only USD.
You don't do cryptocurrency?
No, I'm an idiot, man. Everybody does cool things that are just like above my head. And I can't. I got to learn something new all the time. I did just complete this. So that's also up on my Etsy. And then I got one in a frame for the shop next time I pop over there.
That's cool because that is a super cool print. I totally dig that. So while I'm thinking about it, for people who are used to seeing Alan on here these days, Alan felt compelled to go to some work thing because they pay him money. So he had to jet for this evening. So we brought Jeremy back for a little blast from the past to check in on him, see how he's doing. But guys, I got to tell you, we have a guest coming on tonight. If you've paid any attention at all, it shouldn't be a huge surprise to you because we have been promoting it like mad. But coming on this stupid little show that we run out of our stupid little comic book store.
We've had some show on the internet.
That's right. It's terrible. But we've had some really cool guests on here in the past, but I think it's safe to say from a comic perspective, we've never had a guest of this caliber. And I have been so excited all week long that we have Mr. Bart Sears coming on the show. So I think we should just get right to it, bring him on, and start hearing from the man himself. What do you say?
I think so. I think that's in order.
Awesome. Let's bring him in.
Hey, guys.
Bart Sears, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Doing great. I'm happy to have a chance to talk to you.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. Look forward to this.
Well, I have been very excited about this ever since you agreed to come on here. I don't know what possessed you, but I'm glad you said yes.
Well, you asked, so
that's all it takes. Good for me. It never worked for me in high school. The girls were like, "No, that's okay. Let's just be friends."
Never worked for any of us.
Oh no, Lord no. But I've been a fan of yours for a really long time.
Thank you.
And you've just done some incredible comic book art. And I thought, I thought I'd at least ask. The worst you could do is say no, right?
Yep.
So I guess if we were to start, it always makes sense. Everybody loves a good origin story. So what would you say your origin story is? How did you get into this whole thing? How did you become a nerd?
Well, I had an older brother, 4 years older. So from anytime I can remember, there were comics laying around the house. So I started reading them when I guess I was 3. So I was learned to read really early, and I loved heroic adventure. And we were always sculpting and drawing and doing all that stuff. And I guess when I was about 10 years old, I saw that Neil Adams' Night of the Werewolf, 80-page or 100-page giant. And it dawned on me that people draw this stuff for real, and I decided that's when I wanted to be a comic artist. And,
at 10?
And I lucked out in high school. My teacher was a sculptor in his own art, and but he could see that I was headed into an illustration, field. So he, I think pretty much from 9th grade, he gave me the so bad with names, an art book, Ancient Illustrator. Dang it, it'll come to me and I'll get back to it. But he gave me an art book that showed a lot of a classic illustration style with all the understructure and block and cube construction and stuff. And he kind of just let me do my thing instead of all the other crap the art class had to do, which was really cool because I learned a lot. Just having that freedom and, him to comment on stuff and to tweak as much as he was able to. And then I went to a year of the Kubert School and started my second year in burnout fast. I realized I really just hated to draw all the time and didn't enjoy it. So I quit and dropped out and moved furniture for 3 or 4 months and met my first wife and decided that I should probably go draw comics. So I did a few sample pages and knocked on Marvel's door, and a very young, very skinny Michael Carlin took me around and introduced me to Larry Hama, and I got my first comic work that day.
Wow, that sounds like there's a story there. Let's shout out to Mr. Colon here from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is going through some serious stuff right now.
Horrible, man.
Man, you jumping on here to say hi and to reach out to Mr. Sears in the situation you guys are dealing with. Hats off to you. Thank you. I hope you guys stay safe.
Yeah, I hope everybody's safe.
That's tough what you guys are dealing with, and we're all thinking about y'all and praying with you here. So thank you for joining us, man. And this RoboCop sketch cover you did for the Heads Will Roll project.
Yeah, that was cool. I think that was the first time I drew RoboCop too.
Oh, wow. So from Mike Carlin and Larry Hama, you got your first gig.
Yeah, and James Owsley was a Spider-Man editor, and he wanted to hire me, but he didn't have anything at the moment.
Man, you would make a killer on Spider-Man.
You make it sound way
probably
too
a
easy.
good thing. I mean, I was more ready to draw like a Spider-Man comic than the stuff Larry put me on. He gave me a story to do in, was it Marvel Black and White? This was back in '85, I think, and it was biker chick stories, and I didn't want to draw motorcycles, and I really didn't want to draw chicks. I wanted to draw superheroes, but I turned in the first eight or 10 pages. I can't remember what the stories were. And he was like, "All right, great." And he threw them back at me and he said, "Go ink them." I was like, "Oh, you son of a." So I took it back and inked it, and was not really happy with it. I wasn't really happy with my pencils, and definitely wasn't happy with my inks. But he took it, turned it in. He gave me the second story, and it was another story in the biker chick thing. And I had hated my first one so bad that I just spent forever drawing the second one, and turned those pencils in and got right out of comics as fast as I could, because it was too hard. It was a lot of work, and I wasn't mentally or craft-wise prepared for it.
What did you do from there?
Pardon?
What did you do from there? You said you got out, but
Just in the straight illustration. I did stuff for TSR. I think the first book I did for TSR was a Wolverine book, like one of those choose your own adventure books.
Yeah, I remember those.
That was pretty cool. A Doctor Strange one.
like this kind of Wolverine.
Good old Wolverine. And what else? And then I started doing paintings. A buddy of mine I went to Kubert School with, Mark Pennington, got hired right out of the school to design G.I. Joes for Hasbro. And he hooked me up with them to do paintings. Yep. There you go. And so I did, I think I did one creature painting for some toy line. And I'd never painted before.
Now let's go back. You did paintings for G.I. Joe, the toy line?
Yeah.
These wouldn't be the action figure paintings with the light, the explosion kind of behind them on the.
No. These were internal paintings that they used for the big meetings when they would
pitching ideas.
Yeah, I think they did them once a month. I can't remember exactly, but all the executives would come into the auditorium, a little auditorium they had there, and they'd line up all these paintings of all the different action figures and vehicles or whatever. And they talk about them, and then they pick which ones they actually wanted to make that year.
So it was like concept art.
Yeah, it was all concept art. Like Mark would design like a G.I. Joe, and he'd do like a color guide, and then they'd send it out to a painter to do like an action painting. I think they were 18 or 24 by 18, something. I can't remember how big they were, but they were pretty good size. And the first one I did was some creature. And then I did a bunch of G.I. Joes. I don't know, 8 G.I. Joes maybe. And,
you don't remember which ones by any chance? Because this is
Road Pig, Deep Diver, and I might not know their real names because internally the real names come after everything is done when Larry starts writing the bios.
Well, Road Pig is certainly one of the more interesting dreadnoughts.
Yeah,
he's a character.
He was fun. I don't really have images of them either. There's some I have floating around, but it was before scanning and everything. I took Polaroids of them, but I've lost most of that. I think I had some color copies, but they're hard to find. All of them.
How long did you do illustrations for toys?
Well, freelance for Hasbro that time, it was just a few months, and then they hired me in-house to actually design. And I came in and spent, I think, 2 weeks on G.I. Joe. Mostly, I did a couple. I think I did a couple sculpture sheets of figures Mark had already designed. I know I did a bunch of like accessory sheets, and then they got the Cops and Crooks line, and they put me on that. So I did 2 produced years of Cops and Crooks, and the third year that never got made.
Wow.
And then I quit a year to the day.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a pretty busy time period there for you. That's a lot going on in 1 year.
Yeah, but that job was so easy. I mean, when I came in, it was funny. Mark and the other figure artist there pulled me aside after a couple of weeks and said, "Slow down. You're making us look bad. We've got this system set up." So honestly, most of my time there was just twiddling my thumbs. I mean,
did you go right from that to the X-Men and Marvel project?
Nope. I went since I did Cops and Crooks, and they made it a cartoon. And DC did a comic on it. And the marketing guy was really cool. And because for Hasbro, I did, we sent out the top stuff to be painted and to do the package art. And I penciled art and Pennington inked it. We sent it to a friend of ours in New Jersey who colored it. He applied for that gig through the marketing department, and they hired us, not knowing it was us, to do all the package art for Cops. And then they hired the same guy to do all the paintings for the second and third year designs, which was us doing it, which they didn't know. So that was kind of crazy. So that was actually more work than the work I actually did for them, probably, time-wise anyways. Sorry about that, guys. But I think the marketing guy knew. The marketing guy was pretty savvy, and he was really nice, Kirk Bazigian. And I always assumed he knew. I'll put it that way. And but when DC came up, Doug Wench and Andy Helfer, he knew I had drawn some comics before and liked comics, so he let me sit in the meeting they had with Cops. Because it should have just been the marketing people. They didn't care about the design guys. And he told me to bring my portfolio so I could show it to him. So I brought in some of the comic stuff I'd done. And Andy was like, "You want to draw some comics?" I said, "Sure." So he kept saying, "Don't quit your job. Don't quit your job. Don't quit your job." But as soon as he gave me my first comic, which was Cops #4, I quit. And it didn't realize it, but it was a year to the day they hired me, which was strange.
Like a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got killer timing.
Yeah. And I was a freak back then. I showed up when I went to my interview at Hasbro. I had, kind of longish hair. It was like, 80, 85, 86, something like that. And when I showed up for my first day of work, I had a bleach blonde mohawk. And
Nice.
The same guy, I could tell the guy that did my entrance interview just hated my guts. He was just disgusted with me completely. And he was the same guy that did my exit interview. And he was like all smarmy, like, "Oh, you only lasted a year, being a dick." And then he opened my folder and started reading my performance reviews and the 2 letters of commendation I had written by different people, directors I worked with, sculpting guy and my immediate boss. And he was like, "Oh, holy shit, I guess we're good."
And this is the first cover you did for that project?
I don't remember if it was the first one or not. It may have been, but I do know, and this should have been the shining light on comics in the 80s, because I did issue 4 of Cops, right? That's because I think Pat Broderick was doing it. He was so late on issue 1, they needed a fill-in already on issue 4. And when I finished issue 4, Andy said, "All right, I need you to do issue 3 now." So then I did issue 3.
Wow.
I did a bunch of covers, and Andy put me on Spectre, the new, not the new Spectre series. It was, I was going to take over Spectre monthly, which I wasn't that excited about. It wasn't, I wanted more, knockdown, drag out kind of comic, but
More Batman.
yeah. But I took it, and it was pretty cool. They were 24-page stories back then.
Right.
And so I took it. I did the first 6 pages. I remember I finished page 6 on a Monday. And I got a call from Andy, and he said, "I really need your help. There's this 80-page book that the artist bailed on, and I need you to draw it. It's the big crossover event. I really need you on it." He's like, "It won't be horrible because Keith Giffen's going to write it, and he does layouts, so you'll have like a starting point rather than the blank page." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." He's like, "The only thing is you'll have to do 8 pages a week. You have to pencil 8 pages a week." I'm like, "Holy shit."
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I was like, "All right, let's do it." He's like, "Okay, so you got to come in this Friday for a big meeting on it, because we're having a big meeting, and I got to, walk you through it all and blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "And you got to bring in Spectre pages. I'm like, okay. He's like, well, you got to bring in all of the Spectre pages. I was like,
so they upped your timeline, so all of a sudden you had to do all of Spectre before you could even start this other
pages. This is Monday night, so I had Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I had to leave Friday morning like 8 o'clock to get to New York by noon. So I basically had 3 days and Monday night to do 18 pages of pencils.
That's absurd.
Which I did. I do not encourage you to go look at Spectre 18.
Of course,
did you sleep at all?
Hooked up. What?
Did you sleep at all during that time period?
I don't know. I was young. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe a little. But the work isn't great, and I hooked Mark Pennington up to ink it, and it was really both our first real big jobs in comics. On a name book, and the first 5 or 6 pages are pretty good, but don't look past that because I just pounded those out, and and what was nice at the time is, you do that now, you're screwed. But back then, they were just thankful I got it done. They got the book out on time, and they got me onto this 80-page monster, which was Invasion. So I ended up doing Invasion number 3 and all the covers and the cool poster, which I don't know if you remember the poster for Invasion, but it had all these little figures running at the bottom and the big alien head up at top, which was somehow weirdly designed by Matt Groening. He did a little sketch for it. I was like, why is a Simpsons creator doing a rough sketch of a faux movie poster for DC's event? I don't know, but that's what it was. So
that's incredible. This is all new stuff to me, so this is awesome.
Did you do the cover for that too, for Invasion number 3?
All 3 covers.
It's so much easier for me to find these covers to pop them up while we talk.
Okay.
Yep, the actual panels itself, they're hard to find. So this is what you did for that book.
Yep.
You have a very storied career, honestly. Like the way you tell the story is, I just showed up at Marvel one day and they're like, okay. But
it was a different time. You could just knock on the door, and if somebody was willing, they'd just bring you around. And luckily, Mike Carlin was, he's young, he's new editor there. He saw me there, a pregnant wife in tow, and I don't know if he felt sorry for me because we'd driven down from the wilds of New York State or whatever, but he maybe he looked at my work outside first. I don't know, but I wish I had
that card. That's a good card to play. A little unfair.
Yeah, yes, that didn't hurt at all. I gotta say, but at least the work backed it up. So that was cool.
So after you did Invasion, we're starting to get up toward the timeline where your name started like popping really hard.
Yep.
Across comics.
Justice League Europe was my gift or my reward for doing coming in and doing Invasion and doing it in 10 weeks, all 80 pages and 3 covers and the poster. So they, and Justice League had started. I don't know if it was popular, how popular it was, or if it exploded on the scene, or if Justice League slowly grew into popularity. But they wanted to do that Europe spinoff, and they put Keith and I on that, which was great. And I almost didn't take it because at the same time Marvel called.
This is what you're talking about?
Yep, that was the ad for Justice League Europe when Wonder Woman was the leader of the group before Perez said, no, I don't want her in there. So
is that how she got pulled from that?
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep. That's wonderful. So that's a poster.
Yeah. Yep. That was, it was an ad that went in the back of the books. I don't know if they made a poster out of that one. There was another one that was an ad too, which was more of a down shot looking at him.
I remember that ad very well because back in the day when they did ads for comic books that were about to be coming out, if it looked good, I bought it.
It also feels like they spent more time with the actual marketing material for art, because now it feels like they don't waste a single line.
But that brings up another story. I got Justice League. I just come off 8 pages a week for 10 weeks. I was fairly fried. I mean, I was very excited to do Invasion or to do Justice League Europe. So I think I started in November and it was shipping in like maybe June or something. And forgive me if the dates are wrong at this point. And I'd finished issue 1 and started issue 2. And in January, I was at a convention in Toronto, I think. And some fan comes up and he's like, "Oh man, I can't wait for Justice League Europe. You know, it's coming out in February. You know, this is going to be awesome." I'm like, "Whoa, it comes out in June, not February." And again, I might have the months squared now, but it was 3 or 4 months earlier than I was told and was on the schedule.
You got that phone call.
No,
3 days.
No, it does not. And he's like, "Oh yeah." And I don't know if he showed me an ad or he was so adamant. I was like, "What the hell?" So I get home and I call Andy. I'm like, Justice League Europe 1's coming out in June, right? He's like, "Oh no, it comes out in February." I'm like, "Motherfucker," you know? And he's like, "Yeah, and you're behind." I'm like, I want to choke you so bad right now. But that was comics back then. And it's weird. They put a schedule to fill in for issue 9. And then Andy asked me to ink it. So I don't know why there was a fill-in. I don't understand. But anyway, so I inked it and did issue 10. And went on. I don't know when the next fill-in was, but that's how comics worked back then.
I tell you, when you start looking at things like doing the promo art and things like that for ads and such, one of the things that drives me absolutely nuts with modern comics is I go to order a new series, and in previews, okay, granted that's 3 months ahead, right? But in previews, there's no cover image. I get to final order cutoff, which is 3 weeks before the book hits the shelf, and there's still no cover image. How am I supposed to market that? Especially when it's variant covers, like it's the exact same inside of the book. Literally, the only selling point of this book is that cover.
Yep. And
you can't show it to me by the time I have to order it. That tells me that cover should not exist.
In my experience, and I haven't had a lot of experience lately with certainly the mainstream comic companies, but the overriding thing I hear and experience is there's just not a lot of people that really know what to do. So scheduling is always awful. Follow through is horrible. Communication is horrible. You know, it's not impressive. Back then there was a well-oiled machine and they knew what they were doing. And heck, when I started at DC, they didn't think to cancel a book. They didn't even talk about canceling a book until it hit 30,000 copies, you know, until it dropped that low. And I was privy to many conversations, which I probably shouldn't have been, between editors and management there, because I was always very quiet and they think they forgot I was there. But, you know, this book just hit 29 and they're like, "Oh, we got to cancel it." And, you know, the editor would be like, "Well, how about we give him, you know, 3 or 4 more issues? In the meantime, let's find something else because he's a good guy, you know, like working with him. He does good work. He's on time." And they'd be like, "Yeah, okay, we'll give it 3 or 4 more, but you got to find something for him, you know." And it was just like, that would never happen anymore, ever. So
it sounds like the way you tell the story, it used to be that it was kind of a well-knit family-like environment. You could just show up and talk to somebody.
Oh, I loved DC and Marvel back in the day. I loved it. You could go, you could hang out all day. If you wanted to work, there was always a desk somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you could just walk around, say hi to people. But that all changed. Probably, I'm not sure exactly when. It was, I guess, the end of the 90s, early 2000s. Sometime in there when I was at CrossGen, it all changed up in New York.
Now, before we get to CrossGen, let's go back a little bit because we talked about it a little bit before we went on the air. But one of the biggest things for me was when Wizard Magazine came out, and Wizard magazine kind of took the comics world by storm.
It was awesome.
But it took a little while before it really caught on. It's the first few issues come out, and then there's this one cover that grabbed everybody's attention, and it was just impossible to ignore. We sold it like hotcakes. Everybody had to have it, and nobody knew who the artist was.
Yep.
And
there it is.
We argued about that forever. Who is this guy? Because then this same mystery man went on to do several other Wizard magazine covers, and they were all awesome, but nobody knew who it was.
Yeah, that would be me. Whitman's my middle name, and I think I spelled it different on covers too. I don't know why, but I can never remember how I actually spelled it, and I still don't know how it's legally spelled, because I never use it. But yeah, that was me. That was the Venom cover, and I know Garib told me at one point that they couldn't print enough of them.
No.
And it was a real turning point for the magazine.
I was working at a comic shop at the time, and I can tell you we couldn't keep it in. Could not keep it in. So how did you come to be doing? What was the story behind the anonymity of those covers?
Well, when I first started talking to Garib, which was they hadn't put out the first issue yet, but they'd been working on it. I had an exclusive with DC, and I was just starting Legends of the Dark Knight, Faith 21, 22, and 23.
God, Legends of the Dark Knight was such a good book.
And I was teaching at the Kubert School, and a buddy of mine, Mark McNabb, who at that point ran the Kubert School design place, because they had a design studio for a while. I think he knew Garib because he went to Garib's family's comic shop, or maybe Garib came to the Kubert School to try to find artists or get some more input. And he and McNabb hooked up, and McNabb was like, "Oh, you gotta talk to Bart." So I met with Garib and started working with him and doing they had wizards everywhere. There were little wizards in the magazine. I drew all those, and
that's really cool.
Started doing covers, because I think the Batman cover and the Flash cover were Sears. And then he wanted a Venom cover for issue 9, because I don't know where it was in Venom's lifespan, if he was a new character or whatever. And
he'd been around for about 9-10 years at that point.
Okay.
And he was still extraordinarily popular.
Huh. That's cool. And I was a little nervous about doing so much work for Garib when I had an exclusive for DC. So I was talking to him about toying with the idea of using a pseudonym for covers. And he was like, let's do that on this Venom cover. Let's use a pseudonym, and let's see how a really cool cover with an unknown artist name sells. And they found out. So
I tell you, the mystique of who is this, who drew this, that was a conversation on Wednesdays at the comic book store. Actually, New Comic Book Day was on Thursdays at that point. But that was a conversation at the store. Big arguments over who this guy was and all this stuff. It was incredible. But the sheer power oozing off of this, and then that kind of liquid look to everything with the splatters and all that.
Yeah.
That cover right there is just awesome.
Yeah, I did somebody asked for a commission of that, but like an updated version. So I did a pencil version of that. Not a recreation, but a whole new look for that same idea. So that was kind of fun.
Really cool. So you said that it was a turning point for Wizard, right? Wizard so I was born in 1985. So you're
that's where I started in comics.
Yeah, exactly. So you've been a comic artist the whole time I've been alive, and you've actually informed a significant amount of my experience in comics, which I'd love to talk more later. But so like Wizard is a huge comic. How does it feel to be able to say that you personally, with your own hand, turned the tide for Wizard? Like that's such a big statement.
I'd say I helped, and that's what Garib told me at one point. So it's nice to help, but I mean, it was a great magazine for comics too, especially at the time it came out. It was perfect. You know, unfortunately short-lived because I wish it was still around. It was a really fun magazine. I mean, that's everybody read it just to see what the heck's going on because there wasn't this.
Right.
You know,
there was no internet. If you wanted to read an interview with somebody, you had to read it in a magazine, and there were precious few things like that aimed at comic book folks and about comic book creators. And also, if you wanted to know what a creator looked like, because they would put pictures of them in the back of the book a lot of times with different things. Like, here's the hot writers this month or the hot artists this month. And there would be pictures of them. So sometimes you'd look at somebody and be like, wait a minute. He looks like what? That's what Grant Morrison really looks like.
I got a funny story about Athletic Comics in Israel and Donajay about that very thing when we get to that point.
Yeah, it would throw you. You're like, wait a minute. David Finch looks like what now? That's not right. It's just not how you would have pictured it, right?
I'd love to be a little selfish and steer the conversation because I feel like we're getting close to what I'm dying to talk to you about. Okay. Again, 1985, right? So I loved these toys.
Oh yeah.
This was it for me. Like this was it. If I had money, it went to these toys. Comic books were second to this. And so to know that you were the person that actually designed these toys just blows my mind.
Yep. And that came about, I guess it was 93, ended 92 or 93. Somebody, I can't remember if it was somebody from Toy Biz or somebody from Marvel that was the Toy Biz liaison, called me and said, we need some help. Because if you remember the early 90s, style went crazy. And I just mean lines were everywhere. And a lot of the stuff was just nuts visually. And apparently the toy designers at Toy Biz, hey, Paul, hey, Joel, they couldn't figure out what the characters look like because this thing they drew on the front of him is completely gone when they draw the side view, or it looks like something completely different. Or there's this backpack, and every time they draw it, it's different. You know, people were concerned about lines, not about structure. I've always been a guy that if I'm drawing it from this angle, I have to draw it so it looks exactly right from this angle. And whoever, I can't remember who contacted me, but whoever it was familiar. I'd done all the toy design work. And they were like, you know, these guys can't figure this stuff out. Can you design these? Can you do the 3 views for us and figure out what these characters look like? I'm like, sure. So that's how it started. So I ended up doing, I think some in 92 and I think all of 93 and 94 Toy Biz lines. But that's
so, you know, I'm at 93. What am I, like 7 or 8, right? I'm a 7 or 8 year old boy, just absolutely in love with X-Men, specifically Spider-Man. And I'm toting this thing around in my lunchbox, like carry around to school. Like I've got it on me all the time. This one specifically, that's why I grabbed Cyclops. I loved it. How does it feel to know, or do you spend any time thinking about the idea that you have personally actually helped, I'm going to phrase this the right way. My childhood was different because of your hand in comic books. Yes, I'm sure somebody would have done it, right? But you did.
Oh, I mean, it's incredibly humbling, and I get that experience more from the Brutes and Babes column in Wizard Magazine than from the toy design stuff. But I think a lot more people know about the Brutes and Babes and the fact that I designed all the Cops and X-Men toys. Did a bunch of wrestlers too, but it's very humbling. I mean, you don't think about it. You sit here at this, desk scribbling on stuff, all day and you send it in and you don't think about it,
Yeah.
I mean, it's especially back then. I mean, I didn't meet somebody who bought one of those toys until that knew I did it, probably until the 2000s, somewhere in the late 2000s at a show, or maybe early 2000s. But, you just don't think about it really. But it's really humbling because to be a part of leaving that kind of memory, especially good memory, with young kids or young adults or, anyone really, it's kind of strange, it's a little, but it's definitely humbling. I mean, it's weird to, be told how much a part of someone's life something you did became.
Right. Like, I can't imagine the other places where you've worked on comics that I just never thought about as a kid. I mean, the other day I picked up Maiden, and I just looked at it and I was like, this looks like a really cool book. And I didn't think, I wasn't looking specifically for your work. That was a cool book. So I am just I'm personally kind of in awe of the thread that you're, discussing that you have woven through comics as a whole. Thanks.
I mean, Maiden is pretty much wholeheartedly my wife's idea and co-writer on it. I mean, that's her thing. We've got a deal to do 20 stories with heavy metal. It's just tough to get it done and tough to make money on it. So I've got the second story arc started, but I just haven't had time to devote to it yet. Everything else going on. And we just bought a fixer-upper, which I do not recommend.
Jeremy's a realtor in real life, so he knows. He can understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
And Josh just spent like a year remodeling his kitchen.
That was an involuntary remodel. We had a water leak that just took that long to discover. It had already done so much damage, and then it took 10 months to get a functioning kitchen back.
I hear you. We've been here for 3 months, and we have no shower yet, so.
Oh,
thank God rough. The YMCA is right around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Family plan came in handy.
Yeah, you get your money's worth out of that real quick. But you talked about brutes and babes a minute ago, and that's absolutely one of the things I wanted to discuss because for guys like me who, I'm not an artist. I can draw a little. If I really sit and do over and over, I'll finally get to something where I think, hey, that's not terrible. But for all of us back in the day where we were like, dude, this guy is kind of pulling back the curtain and he's showing you how to do this stuff. Brutes and Babes was awesome.
Thank you.
And then I look at something like this as kind of I can see some of the roots of Brutes and Babes kind of here, right? He's a little bit blockier for an action figure kind of standpoint, I would guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, you pay attention to the anatomy in a way that a lot of artists don't. And I wonder, you talked about this teacher you had who was a sculptor and the books that he gave you. It sounds like you would attribute your focus on anatomy back to that, maybe?
Well, I actually put it further than that because when I started, I didn't start drawing. Well, I always drew as a kid because you always draw as a kid. But I started sculpting little figures when I was, with clay when I was 7, 8 years old. And I just became fascinated with the, human body, with the heroic figure. And then I started, clay was soft and you couldn't get detail. And I didn't know anything about, I didn't even, real clay then. It was just, whatever clay kids had back in the late 60s. And so it was easier to continue that with pencil. So I started penciling, heroic images and heroic figures. And then when I was 10, I just took out tracing paper, and anything I liked in a comic, I just threw tracing paper over it and redrew it. But I didn't just try to copy it. I tried to figure out how it was drawn. So when I found those books on structure, I had How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way whenever that came out. I don't know, 72 or 74, I don't remember. But 76, I don't know. But so there was some semblance of understructure and stuff. But when I saw, that book that my teacher gave me in 9th grade, or let me borrow, lights started going on, and I started seeing that there was a method to constructing a figure, and more so than just how to draw comics the Marvel way. There was an actual scientific art to it, really. A way to break down what you're looking at and reconstruct it with blocks and cubes and cylinders. So that was a real light bulb moment on me.
So,
but it's all about the figure and about basic drawing for me. You can put any style over it. That style I don't give a crap about. That's the boring part. The drawing.
That's where this comes from.
Yep. Those were Drawing Powerful Heroes 1 and 2. And there's, you guys are putting up the thing for. No, that's the Drawing Powerful Heroes 2. Anyhow, what I did with those books is collected all the Brutes and Babes columns I did for Wizard Magazine, but I redid them and expanded each section and did 5 new tutorials in each book.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out.
I've actually got the 3rd book coming out, which I just posted up a sign-up sheet for Indiegogo, which you guys can find on my website or in any of my social medias, which is all Bart Sears art.
What is your website? It's bartsearsart.com?
bartsearsart.com. Yeah, I'm getting ready to launch the new website, and this is an art piece for sale on it. There's some new art up there.
Oh, very cool.
This is what's your name?
Power Girl?
Yeah, but it's the Alex Ross story. What the heck was it called? Where she's really, really big and buff. Shoot, now I can't remember. Just thinking about it.
That's right. I'm racking my brain. I know exactly what it is. I can picture it.
I can find it.
Driving me nuts.
Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come. That's it.
Kingdom
That's thinking Mark
Come.
Waid. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So she's the big buff one. But there's a bonus on it because I started drawing her as the normal one on the back, and then I just decided I wanted to do the more buff one.
Do you mind a quick digression here? I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to kind of show off your website a little bit because there's some really cool stuff. And it's
a lot of stuff in the portfolio. There's a ton of stuff in there.
And it's stuff that we've kind of talked about. For instance, can you guys see this Venom? I had to make the StreamYard really small for me, but we've got the Venom print here of what we've been discussing. So
it's cool to see that without the wizard trade dress on it.
Yep.
That's
God,
awesome.
what an image.
And you've got a lot of actual just, line real original artwork here for sale too.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah. Not a lot so far, but I'm trying to populate it a little. There's my.
And this is where you would drop stuff when it comes out.
Yep.
Look at that. Go back one. Oh man.
This one?
Yeah. When you do this stuff like in the style that you used on The Path, which was this very spare, high contrast kind of look, lots of heavy inks, but really clean, crisp lines.
Mm-hmm.
There was something, I don't know, there's just something about that and that style, because it's a different style from what you use. Maybe when you talk about throwing the style on top of the figures, that's
especially
what you're talking about.
What I did on first, which was sort of like that hyper-muscled superhero look that I developed, which they wanted on the first. I certainly didn't want to do that on The Path. So I just developed a style that I find a little more natural and in a way has more power because it relies more on black and white design than on overly muscled and powerful, in your face imagery. And I actually penciled most of that 8.5 by 11. The spread's 8.5 by 11 with markers and just black markers. And we blew those up on blue lines, and that's what Mark inked.
Interesting.
Very cool.
But no, I really thought that was such a departure for you in style because, I expected the big, burly, super-powered muscle guys like you had in the first, right?
Yep.
Or like this.
But when you portfolios.
When you switched to that other style, it really showed some range, but it was also so cool because that it suited the tone of that book so well.
No, in a way, I've always tried to fit what I'm doing with what I feel the book is telling me, whereas with a lot of superhero stuff, I see that as more slick. Conan stuff, I see much more illustrated and liney and, a lot of gray and, a mishmash. And I did this cowboy story, and I did kind of a mix of what I did with the Path and what I would do for Conan. So it's got some stylized line work and a lot of blacks, but it's not, the figures aren't overly rendered. It just, for me, and part of it is because I really don't enjoy drawing. It's the way I'm interested.
That's fair.
Did I mishear you? You really don't enjoy drawing?
I really don't draw anything other than work that I'm paid to draw. If I have free time, I write, or usually I write or create properties and different things like that. I don't. It's not a love.
Interesting. That's a heck of a skill you've got, though.
Right.
And I don't get me wrong. I'm incredibly lucky. I wish I enjoyed it more. I wish I was one of those guys that was just drawing all the time, but I'm just not.
That's me, but nobody pays me for it, so we could trade.
Well, I would like to show everybody. I went to a convention in Atlanta. This would have been 2000. I want to say 2004.
Yeah, couldn't have been later because I think that's about the time CrossGen died.
Yeah, it was 2004, 2005. I think this was 2004, and I got to talk to you for a while, and you did a sketch for me, and I had to. You said, hey, just leave it here with me for a minute and I'll do it. And I had to go do something else. And when I came back, you said, here you go. And I took a picture of it. So forgive the fact that it's a little wonky, but I took a picture of it earlier after I dug out all my old sketchbooks and found it. And it's this picture from the Path, which is this simple little image. It's so minimal. It's not some giant headshot taking up the whole page. It's just the bottom corner with this little hill. And this guy crouching here with the arrows and stuff. And then there's this long note people can see underneath there. And so I zoom in on that. It says, this sucks, but you can have it if I can do it better on Sunday.
I like it better now.
Notice I didn't bring it back to you to get a better one. I was like, I don't know what he's going to do that is better than that, because that is so amazing. There's so much going on there.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad you liked it.
And the note just made it all the more special, because I was like, dude, he can't write this on too many things that he gives out.
I really hate drawing at conventions. My preferred way to work is with a light box. I do layers and layers of drawings, and to get to the final version. So convention sketching has always been nerve-wracking to me. I never enjoyed it. And that's why mostly at conventions I only do the 5x8 head sketches, because that doesn't, it doesn't stress me out, and I'm much more happy with the results than I usually am if I have to do a torso or especially a full figure at a show, which I usually do not do at all anymore. But back then I hadn't developed any of these ideas as to how to survive a convention without stressing out. So, I do these sketches and completely hate them, and, never see them again, because it was, way back then, and the internet was just starting. So they're just getting popular,
and then you regret for the rest of your life that they're just floating out there somewhere.
Yep.
I know that feel.
But see, I think if you're looking at it from, I know what this should look like, and I have this picture in my head, and that's not exactly how it turned out, because I'm in a different environment than I normally do my art and all this. So you look at it, and you just see the things you don't like. I can tell you flat out from the perspective of somebody like me, I just got a drawing from Bart Sears, and I'm over the moon.
Well, that's cool. I do appreciate that.
This is the coolest thing in the world. And
before we move on from the Path, I want you to know also, when Josh learned I was an artist, when I went into his store one of the first few times, The Path is one of the very first things he tried to get me hooked on. He tried to sell it to me immediately. He saw what I was doing, and he was like, "You need this." He's
Awesome.
legit about The Path.
Awesome.
It was such
That's
a
a fun
great book. But and like I said, the style departure from the first was something. But it's talking about, you did 2 different books for CrossGen, and CrossGen came up right after we opened our store. I worked at a comic book store in the early and mid 90s, but we opened our own store in 2001. So we've been around for 21 years now. And CrossGen came up just shortly after we opened. So CrossGen was big with us because we were new, it was new, and there was a lot going on.
Yep.
And frankly, we loved it. There were a couple of titles that we weren't that excited about.
Yeah.
But when you have things like The Path, you have Ruse, you have Meridian, you have Scion was great. And they were all kinds of different books. They weren't all superheroes. You had sci-fi, fantasy.
Yep.
You had this Victorian Sherlock Holmes character. You had Greek mythology. You had Japanese shogun kind of thing. I mean, it was all over the place as far as the different worlds. But it was awesome. And we loved it. And they were trying something different. And
quality was exceptional.
Oh, it absolutely was. I have to tell you, as an aside, the first time I really noticed the power of a colorist in a comic was in a CrossGen book. It was El Cazador with art by Steve Epting and Justin Ponser on colors.
Yep.
And he blew me away. I was like, what is going on here? Because this is phenomenal. And God bless him. We lost Justin Ponser just a couple of years ago to cancer. But an incredible artist. And he really opened to my eyes to what a colorist can do. What a generational talent.
Yep. No, for sure. And I mean, Laura Martin and Mike Attia and I can't remember everybody's name. But yeah, I mean, and I think, it was a environment. You were hired, you came into work every day, into the office. You had health insurance, you had a steady paycheck, you had, anything you needed to draw, basically, and all the support you could hope for. Not to mention other skilled artists around that you could just chat with or whatever. And we used to have to put our pages up for the book we were working on the cubicle walls, so you could go around and look at all this great stuff, and it cannot help but fire you up. And nobody wanted to be that guy that put up a shitty page. So I think every single artist there got leaps and bounds better by the time it ended or they left. It was just a melting pot. Now, not everyone's personality was fit. I mean, you're a freelance artist, you're drawing comics, generally that's a lone wolf kind of business. You're maybe not really socially comfortable, or don't like it or whatever. But so definitely wasn't for everybody. But I think a lot of the people there really benefited from that kind of melting pot of quality work.
Well, he tried to create a real honest to goodness bullpen, right?
Yeah.
It was a real bullpen.
He thought that was actually true.
Right, he did. It wasn't how the Marvel was really set up, but that's what he tried to create.
Yeah.
And
he had the best intentions. He wanted everybody to retire because he, when he sold his business, Mark Alessi, he started, going to more comic shows and getting more and more interested in comics. And he always loved comic art. And he started to see and hear all these stories of all these artists, older artists that, and that's one of the reasons Hero was created, which is now Hero Initiative, I guess.
The Hero Initiative, yep.
Yep. And he was one of the founding members of it and one of the, big contributors initially to get it going. And, he wanted to build a comic company that did great comics, but also that pros could eventually retire from. I mean, that was his huge plan. And that's what sold me on the place is that whole idea. Unfortunately, the business sense wasn't there to make that a reality. But
Well, he brought over some incredible talent. I mean, you were there. Steve Epting was there.
Yep.
Greg Land was there.
Brandon Peterson.
Brandon Peterson was there. Scott Eden.
Yeah.
And there were some young guys who came up over there, like Steve McNiven, who is now like one of the big names in comics.
Jim Chung.
Jim Chung, absolutely. I've got a page of Scion up on the wall at the shop from a store. Yeah. It was a story called Haven, and the name of our store is Haven, so we couldn't help it. It's a 2-page spread, which was one of the things I appreciated as a guy who buys a lot of art, is that the CrossGen 2-page spreads were just one sheet. You didn't have to tape 2 of them together. Makes framing them a lot easier. But we've got that on the wall at the shop. I've got a couple of pages from Jeff Johnson on
Jeff's great stuff.
From Way of the Rat.
What a great book.
I have a couple of his pages up on the wall at the store. So yeah, I was big. I was into almost all of the books that they were doing. Have a good one, Kyle. Thanks for joining us, man.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
And I hated to see them close up shop. It seemed like they kind of expanded a little too fast, maybe. Like he didn't grow in a sustainable way, so he expanded too fast and then it collapsed. Is that your assessment from the inside?
Yes. And he did the Forge and Edge books, which were the small collected. They weren't even collected. They were the small, like, this was all the books we printed in May of 2002 or whatever. And that just never went anywhere. It was a huge money drain.
Oh, we did killer with those books because you could tell somebody, here's 3 different comics or 4 different comics in this book at an affordable price point, and you're going to love these. No. And we sold those really well, and that led to sales on the individual issues because they're like, well, where do I get the next one? I'm like, well, here you go.
Well, I'm glad it worked for you. I mean, that was the plan, and also to get them into bookstores, and it just never materialized, and they were expensive to print, as I recall.
Well, it had to be the production values on all those
huge quantity, expecting to sell a lot, and they just didn't. And that wasn't a good thing. He also he wouldn't take any movie deals unless they were greenlit movie deals. And Michael Uslan was CrossGen's movie liaison that was out there trying to sell our stuff. And I witnessed him tell Mark countless times, nobody is going to give you a greenlit movie deal. You know? And I don't know how many deals he brought him, but Mark didn't take a single one. So
I tell you, you go back and you say this is about the time when Peter Jackson was coming out with the Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah, I think that was 99.
A Sojourn movie would have been phenomenal. And that would have done gangbusters.
I think the one that was closest to getting made was Way of the Rat.
Oh, yeah, that was clearly supposed to be a Jackie Chan vehicle. And that would have been phenomenal.
Well, Chuck Russell wanted to do it.
Okay.
And I know there were a lot of talks, and I guess Alessi just could never agree to any of the deals because they weren't guaranteed greenlit.
So that company is now defunct, obviously. Do you have any rights to the work that you did there? Any of the characters? Or
Nope.
Disney owns all of that now.
Yeah. A Disney subsidiary bought it all. Disney tried to put some of it out again, like revive some of it, but it didn't do anything.
They've got a couple more books coming out. They just solicited a book that it's kind of like Forge or Edge. It's 4 different comics in one book.
Really?
And it's just a reprint of something that I don't know what they think it's going to do. It's not designed to bring in new audiences. It's only designed to capitalize on nostalgia for the people who remember it. They have phenomenal properties they're not using from CrossGen, from the Malibu Ultraverse, which was phenomenal back in the day. Good Lord. Yeah. Marvel bought them just so they could get a hold of their coloring process.
Yes. And to get rid of the books.
Right, to knock the competition out. They did a crossover event with them, the God War, And in the process of the crossover event, they just bought them and then shuttered them entirely and took their coloring process.
Yep.
So Disney is now sitting on all the Marvel universe, all of the CrossGen universe, and all of the Malibu Ultraverse. There's so many things there that have not been. They could realize so much benefit from those, and they just have doing nothing with them. And I don't even think the right people know they have them.
Probably not. And I think the main problem is comics don't make any money. So for Disney, it'll always fly below their radar because it's a blip, it's a small little line in the last list of any of their assets. So I'm sure they don't care unless somebody throws out a movie idea that they think's gangbusters for one of them. But, I don't think many people write spec scripts on old Malibu characters. So
I don't know, man. I would read a Nightman book. I would read a Stranger's book. I liked an awful lot of those. I mean, heck, Aaron Lopresti was doing Sludge.
Yeah.
I mean, a book about a moving pile of garbage. Like, how is this compelling?
Doesn't he own Sludge? Didn't he do a Sludge comic again? I think he owns it.
Well, he doesn't own Sludge. He created a character at DC because DC temporarily gave all the rights to Swamp Thing to Vertigo, and they couldn't use Swamp Thing in their own book, so he created a character there called Garbage Man. And then DC decided, well, wait a minute, we're going to bring Swamp Thing back. We don't need your Garbage Man person anymore. So he got the rights back to Garbage Man, and he recently redid his Garbage Man story. He just had to go in and cut out all the Batman and other DC characters, and he put his own characters in and changed the story around it. But we have the trades of that up at the shop with the new story in it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
maybe there was something like that.
That's a good name. That movie would sell.
Well, his superhero group is called the Night Club.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
That's a Netflix. I can see that right there. That's a Netflix long running TV show. You can see it.
Yep.
So while we're talking styles and things like that, going back, you have a style. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but it's different. Let me grab a good image that shows it off. This is one, right?
Yep.
The musculature is very signature to you. The way that you draw across the chest and the shoulders, the arms, especially the forearms, you're the only one that does it that way.
Okay.
I don't know what it is but your style is very clear there, and once you get used to seeing it, it's hard to miss it. This may be the question I've already asked and you've already answered, but you have a different take on the anatomy bit of it. And does this come from that idea of building the body up? From the base anatomy, or where does that come from?
And also, I see a lot in 3D, like figures three-dimensionally. So, and in my mind, with superheroes especially, I'm drawing either if these people actually existed, how they looked, or if they didn't really look like this, they looked more like normal humans, like in the movies and such. This is how people would remember them after experiencing them. So
I like that.
That's how I take it. And I really did that on faith. The Legends of the Dark Knight 21, 22, and 23. I drew this big, bulky, over-muscled Batman because I wanted to draw him how people that saw him would remember it.
Yeah, not even how he is, but the kind of imagined nostalgia looking back at him, or I'm not sure nostalgia is the right word, but that's a really beautiful concept. I really appreciate that.
That's what I think mostly with, especially the superhero stuff.
So you kind of visualize it from, okay, there was an eyewitness to this, and I'm interviewing him, and this is how he describes what he saw.
Yep.
That's a phenomenal concept, because we all distort things when we see them, and certain things stand out to us, and other things fade into the background.
Yeah.
That's really
Two
interesting.
people in a room telling the same memory from 2 years ago, you're going to get two different stories. So,
And Batman would be such a big idea, like Batman specifically, right? That people would just make him such a grandiose thing. Yeah, that's
to me,
cool.
that was also what he wanted. He wanted people to be terrified and never to really see him. To study what he looked like. That's why he's always disappearing. That's why he's coming out of the shadows. And,
I always thought that was one of the reasons he also had the big yellow logo on his chest, was you focus right there on the bat.
Yeah.
And I think it was Frank Miller wrote into one of his stories one time that was also where the most bulletproof part of his suit was. Yeah. And he wanted, if you were going to shoot at him, you wanted to have a target that was going to be protected. So shoot at that, not at my face.
Yeah.
Do you talk about that at all in your book?
I don't know. I do talk about character creation and body size and structure and different shapes, and how the body has to match the character, and how the character stands has to match the character. Because everybody should stand, sit, walk, talk, drink, smoke, fight differently. So I talk about that, but I actually don't think I've talked about that concept yet. But I'm going to write that down, because I got to do a new tutorial on that, because that's a good idea.
I guess we should all buy it and see if it's in there.
That's an even better idea.
Just a real quick thing, Jeremy. I think you're showing his drawing Powerful Heroes 2, and the one he's got coming up is Powerful Heroes 3.
Yep. Oh, this is the one that I found on Kickstarter, and it looks like it was a pre-order. So I think
go to Indiegogo.
This one says pre-order on his website. Let me go to Indiegogo.
Because what he's got on Indiegogo is he's got some pretty sick-looking pages there. You've got a page on there, a couple of them, I guess, where some of the shading and the lines that you have, like the cross-hatching and stuff you've got going on, looks very Bernie Wrightson.
Could be. He was a big influence. I mean, I had that book, The Studio, when I was a kid, with Barry and Bernie and Michael Cluda and Jeff Jones.
I tell you, that same show that I got the sketch from you, Mike Kaluta was there, and that's the first time I'd ever met Mike Kaluta, and like nobody was coming around and talking to him. I don't know what was going on, so I ended up talking to him for like 3 hours, and he ended up saying just like, "Do you want to come back here and sit down?" I was like, "Sure."
Yep.
So I was sitting there talking with him, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, I do have a question. This has always bugged me. Your art style and Charles Vess's art style look like they have a lot in common. Do you agree with that, or do you think that's true?" And he said, "Well, we went to college together and took all the same classes together, so it'd be weird if they didn't." And I was like, "Oh, that explains a lot." Okay. But I felt better that I wasn't just a crazy person seeing some relationship between the two where there wasn't one. So, okay, we got the right link here. For any of you aspiring artists who are watching, if you want to learn how to draw from a guy who knows how to show you in a tutorial, so it's not just you heard it once and then like good luck to you, keep going about your business. You can refer back to this book and the lessons that are in it. Hie thee hither to Indiegogo and sign up for this book. You're gonna want it.
Yeah, and make sure you go over right now and just what you're signing up for is the updates on this campaign. The campaign hasn't officially launched, right?
Right, not until the beginning of November.
All right.
Campaign, you'll be able to get Drawing Powerful Heroes 1 and 2 in softcover. So you can get all 3 at the campaign if you missed the first 2.
You're going to want that, folks. You'll be learning from a master. I'll tell you that. Those old Brutes and Babes things you did, that was the one section I looked forward to in the magazine more than anything when Wizard came out, was Why? What lesson has he got? What lessons he got?
Let me tell you, I've heard more times than I can even count how many people cut out they razored out all the Brutes and Babes and made their own collected editions for when they were drawing and needed some reference. And there's a lot of guys working in art, doing comics now. A lot of big names, and they come up and give me a lot of thanks and credit for Brutes and Babes, and that was impetus for them to get going and learn. So that's really humbling.
Phenomenal tool. And Joel is reminding everybody, if you're buying some of his stuff, also pick up the Black Book.
Yep.
You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of great Black Books. And of course, I don't remember a single name right now.
That's where you keep all the phone numbers of your paramours, right?
Yeah, I should have had it. I didn't think to have a list of that to read from. So,
well, you got so much going on. It's fair, I'm looking at these now. I found this on Ominous Press. Is it all right if I share this?
Sure.
Okay, great. You can go to Ominous Press to look more at the Black Books.
Just the name tells you what you want to know right there.
Yep.
Ominous Press is awesome.
Yeah, I'm not affiliated with that anymore, but.
So let me ask you a question. I know you said you don't just draw for the fun of it so much, but do you have an open commission list? Because I know some of our guys watching are big supporters
it's not
of
open.
the arts, and
it's
they
not
love
open.
to buy.
I have a bunch of commissions that I'm late on, that my wife has started to help me out with organizing in my work schedule. So I've got a list of a bunch of commissions that I'm picking away at. So I'm slowly getting caught up, but it'll be a year and a half before I'm caught up and open a commission list again. Every once in a while, I'll do like headshots or something if somebody sends a cover, but
take that down. You're going to stress him out.
No, he's just excited, man. He's not being pushy.
No. Joel didn't do anything wrong.
Right over there. That's next on my board.
When I have a commission due and somebody mentions it, it's like the worst feeling that I ever have in my life. It's just like
Well, I've got.
It's sad to hear.
Luckily, a lot of patient people, but I think my commissions. There's this thing in my brain. I mean, I can sit down and do a Conan cover for whoever right now, and be fine. But if somebody asks for a Conan commission, I'll spend 2 weeks on it. And,
wow.
And I'll do 100 pre-drawings, and when it's somebody spending their hard-earned money, and my commissions aren't cheap, I cannot treat it like I treat a piece of art for a company. And there's probably not a lot of difference in the final quality, but mentally I can't. I've got to put in all this time and energy. And
I get it. That's insane, though. When it's for the entire world, for everyone to enjoy, you're like, no problem. But when it's for one person,
it's a different kind of pressure,
18
right?
pages in 3 days. I'd never do that for a fan asking for art.
Right.
Sad
it's a different kind of pressure because the one, it's for a mass audience, and the public is a different animal from that one guy who loves your work so much that he's spending his hard-earned money to commission you to do a thing. It's a very different kind of pressure.
And the one thing I learned in my year and almost a half at the Kubert School from the master Joe Kubert himself was it's a commercial art. There's just a lot of things I learned, but it's a commercial art. You got to get it done. You have a deadline, you do it. And commissions are completely different to me. Those are something you're doing for one person to see, and they'll hang in their house forever. It's a work of love, not a work for hire piece of art, even though you're getting paid for it stuff. My mind just can't get around that. So, and the other thing Joe taught me is once you get a script in your hand, that's your story. So do your thing.
That's something else I wanted to ask you about, how much leeway you have. But before we move on to that, I'm very sad to hear that your commission list is closed, because I was going to ask you for a Cyclops, because that has so much personal meaning to me. One day I'll try and hit you back up.
Well, email me at Bart Sears Art at gmail.com.
Add it to your
I have an outstanding list of people that want commissions when it's open again. So,
Well, going back to something you touched on a minute ago, your wife is helping you to get all your stuff organized and all that stuff,
yeah.
and she's also a lot of the story behind Maiden, right?
Yeah, that's my next 2 weeks.
So what you're telling me is your wife is a couple of things. One of them extremely rare, and the other is a definite keeper.
Oh, by far.
That's amazing.
By far. Going on 20 years? Something like 20 years, something like that. I don't know.
Well, just tell her that we all appreciate her too.
She's a brilliant writer, brilliant ideas. We've got a bunch of properties we're developing.
Can you share it so some of our folks can be on the lookout for them?
Probably not really, except for Maiden in Heavy Metal magazine. I think that's a brilliant story, and each separate story arc features a different Maiden. Mm-hmm. We have 20 different stories we've developed.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm going to do the art different in each one because it's what I do. But it'll still be me, and people will know.
Well, if you go by that same principle we talked about a minute ago, where it's like a different person's account or visualization of what they saw, then they would all look different, wouldn't they?
Well, and it is different characters. I mean, the Maiden is like a supernatural force that finds broken, damaged, abused women and takes them over, basically, and seeks revenge and retribution.
So let me help you out. We're going to get this fixed.
Yeah, pretty much. But always at a cost. But it's brutal and it's mature.
Well, it was perfect for heavy metal.
Yeah. Yep. We also wrote Heavy Metal partnered with a company. Shoot, what's it called? Let me find this.
Yeah, Daniel thinks that's an awesome premise. There was that idea, or did that originate with you, or did that originate with your wife?
That was my wife. That's she had a dream, and she told me it. And that's that first drawing that you showed, the spread with her in the graveyard. That was sort of a part of her dream. We actually finished that art somewhere.
That's awesome.
And
that's a heck of a dream.
Yeah, she has really wild, vivid ones. And we started developing it into a story, and it grew into this, and we pitched it to Heavy Metal, and they loved it. That was a good one, Paul. And but Heavy Metal started doing these sort of like radio plays with a company called Wonderworks, and we were picked to do a story for the first season, and they liked it a lot, and they made it the first one they did, and it was what was it called? The Black Ruins of Aramore. So if you go to Wonderworks and Heavy Metal, you can listen to the. It's like a one-person radio play. So we had to write it as a guy telling a story, and it's pretty cool. And we've done a few others for them, which I don't know where that all is, but stuff like that. We just did a Western for Bob Greenberger, his new collected edition, which is another good one. But, we're working on stuff like that and trying to grow our writing since we both love it. And seeing what we can do there.
Well, I'm going to go look that up because that sounds awesome. Just the title of it got my attention. So yeah.
I like this second one, Orange Daughters, we've done, and the beheading of a Gogosha is great. It's an orc, and he's been captured, and he's going to be beheaded, and he's gloating to these captors, these medieval guardsmen captors, about what he and his orc band did before he was captured. It's pretty harsh, but I love that one too. But
if you like orcs, my buddy Scott Oden, I'm seeing if I've got a copy of his book. Okay, here we go. He's a writer, and he and I had a bet. He thought he could set orcs in the real world in a kind of alternate history kind of a thing. And I said, that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to believe that. I had to eat my words because these are the best books that he has written. But A Gathering of Ravens by Scott Oden is
cool.
the first book of a trilogy.
Oh, nice.
It's the and the second one is called Twilight of the Gods. Here.
Oh, sweet.
The third one is going to be coming out soon. But if you like orcs, which Scott has an unhealthy love of orcs, he thinks they get a bad rap in the Lord of the Rings.
Of all the things to have an unhealthy love of.
I tell you, in high school, he wanted to grow his hair out long, and then he wanted to like file his teeth down so that he could be an orc. And I'm like, dude, you are messed up.
That is commitment.
But if you like orcs, that's a pretty brutal dude. He's like the last one, right? As Christianity is taking over, and the old ways of the Norse gods and things are going away. It's
That
this
sounds
last
awesome.
guy hell bent on revenge.
That's awesome.
And it just follows his story, and it's something, man. It's if you like a good hard hitting knuckle sandwich of a book, you'll enjoy that.
I got to check it out because it sounds great. Awesome.
But yeah, he loves orcs and stories and anything, so I'll point him to yours. Because he'll definitely want to check it out. If there's an orc shows up in a book or a movie or anything, he's going to read it.
Yeah, there's orcs in that first one too. They're the bad guys.
Plus, he's a Conan fan. He's a huge Conan fan. His first novel started off as a Conan book. I still have a chapter from it when he was submitting his packages back in the day, and it was a Conan novel before he changed it to his own thing. But now he's being asked to go back and write a story for a Conan anthology.
Oh, sweet.
Where all the people in it are, they're all being told, like, you have to write like Robert E. Howard. You have to write like Robert E. Howard. And he's like, well, nobody told me. Why do I have? And they said, well, you already write like Robert E. Howard. And he's like, oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Good for you, Nick. You needed to finish that. That was important. But Jeremy, we're running long on time here, and I don't want to eat up all of Mr. Sears' night. Is there anything else you've got questions that you want to just say, hey, while we've got him here?
Yeah, well, to close out, one question I would want, if you could give any piece of advice to young up-and-coming artists, what would it be?
Sculpt in clay.
Okay.
If you want to draw comics,
they won't have heard that one.
I've never heard that.
Yep.
Makes perfect sense, too.
You can start seeing things in 3D. You know, it can give your work a whole different look, and not a bad look, but it'll grow what you do, and your ability to see things will improve dramatically.
Yeah, try that out. Write that down.
Plus, it's just fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a good piece of advice.
Well, sir, we really appreciate you taking the time to come out and join us on our show and talk to us.
I appreciate you having me.
Been a big fan for a long, long time, and I was over the moon when you said you'd come on. So I really appreciate it.
It'd be great. I have to come back sometime because we skipped over all of Marvel, barely hit on CrossGen or anything past that. So there's plenty to go.
Well, we would be more than happy to have you back.
Awesome.
Maybe when it comes when your book gets a little bit closer to going live.
Awesome. That'd be
November, great. Bring you back on. We'll talk through some more things and make sure that
let's schedule something. That'd be a blast.
That would be awesome.
That'd be fun. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoyed chatting with you guys and thinking of all these old memories.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. And I guess here's Mike. Yeah, Mike, I'll tell you right now is whenever you do open up your commission list again, you'll see this name on it.
Yeah.
And it's not a hard name to remember. But Mike is actually,
awesome, Mike.
He is on the road going out to his daughter's wedding.
Oh,
and
wow.
he's supposed to be in a rehearsal dinner or something right now, but he bailed on that so he could be here. He got permission from his wife.
Oh, what a good woman.
But, I told him you were going to be on. He's like, but I'm going to be out here at this event. And his wife was with him. She's like, okay, you can step out and you can watch this on your phone.
Can I? Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. I hope you don't get in too much trouble and your daughter doesn't hate you.
Nah, she's cool.
That's good. Can I plug a couple things?
Oh, please do. Anything you want.
On October 8th, I don't have any of the details, but I'm doing a live auction, and I don't even know the company's name because I'm that ill-prepared. My wife does. But it's one of those live auctions they do for a couple hours, and there's going to be some cool artwork on that.
Can you shoot us the information when you get it? I'll even send you a follow-up email so you can reply to it.
You bet.
There you go. There's the price he has to pay. Just some extra honeydews this weekend.
Doing another CGC signing. I have the link. We can send you the link too. And probably my next show will be Albany Comic Con on October 30th.
Do you do a lot of shows?
I think this year Albany will be like 10, and then I'm doing Rhode Island in November.
Have you ever been to Huntsville? We have a pretty good one.
Do you have any anything against traveling to North Alabama?
Nope.
Because we do an awesome show here.
Bring me. I'd love it.
You're selling it wrong. Huntsville is not Alabama. Huntsville is Huntsville. It's its own little super awesome community, one of the best places in the United States to live. So you should come.
No, it'd be great. I'd love to. We actually fled to Alabama when one hurricane was going to hit Tampa. We boarded everything up and we got in the car and we fled to some mountain in Alabama where Bigfoot's supposed to live. The top of it had a little Bigfoot thing they were building. Some cabins or something, and it was a lot of fun.
We'd love to have you.
No, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
It's the Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo. The guy that owns it is a good friend of mine, and I'll talk to him.
Awesome.
I'll talk to him.
It'd be a blast. When is the show?
It's usually mid to late April. So 2023 is April 21st through the 23rd.
Awesome.
And then it'll be the following April as well.
Cool. No, that'd be great. Love to.
This year he's already announced he hasn't announced his big comic guests because he likes to hold some of those closer. But U.S. News and World Report just ranked Huntsville the number 1 place to live and the number 4 most affordable place to live.
Oh, awesome.
That's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but William Shatner is the first non-comic book guest that he announced.
Awesome.
So we'll have Shatner here, so people are excited about it.
That's great.
But I promise, if we're able to get you down here, I won't ask you to do commissions live there on the floor.
Do headshots. Do headshots. I think I did 23 at my last show.
Headshots. That's not bad. Yeah, Blurred Syndicate. Good to see you guys on, man. Always good to have y'all. But yes, Captain Kirk will be here.
I'm not making the same promise about not asking you to draw. So.
Well, I wouldn't ask him to draw something live there on the floor. I might ask him to draw something later.
Headshots are fun. Those are easy to do on the floor. I don't mind those.
Okay, that's
cool. Those are good for me. So
all right. Well, we don't want to keep you all night long, so greatly appreciate you coming on. We will definitely take you up on having you back here before long.
Sweet. That'll be a blast.
This has been awesome. So thank you so much. You have a great night. Everybody, I know we're not a quiz show anymore like we used to be, but I can't help it. When we get to the end of the night, this is my favorite thing to play us off on. So here we go.